Welcome everybody to another episode of Memories of Us. Today we got John, and John is here to tell his story. He has an amazing journey, and without further ado, I'm just going to hand it over to him. Man, we was talking earlier, and I think you guys are going to really like this one. How you doing, John?
I'm doing great, Tony. Thanks so much for having me.
Oh man, it's a pleasure and an honor to have you on, man. So, tell people a little bit about yourself.
Absolutely. So I guess what I would start out by saying is the way that I like to define myself, first of all, is I'm a guy. And really, that's where I start and kind of end. I'm just a guy. Right. I'm a dad, right? Because I've had an experience now over a few years of doing advocacy and volunteerism work and a variety of support things and support vehicles for dads, specifically special needs dads, since I am also a special needs dad myself. But I started out just being a guy, just being a dad, being someone who saw, first of all, a need for myself to reach out and get support, having a son who was diagnosed with autism very young, and seeing how much pressure that put on my family, my relationship, my marriage, impacted finances, medical decisions, the whole gamut of things, right? But the reality of it is that, look, I started out like anyone else. I currently live in the north suburbs of Chicago. I was actually raised on the north side of Chicago. I was raised in a very stereotypical Chicago home, meaning that if you watch these TV shows or movies and you listen to all these these funny accents and dialects and all that, and all the funny ways they pronounce words and things. That was my house, right? That's exactly how I grew up. Very, very much that kind of Chicago family at home. Right. And, blue collar family. I didn't come from much. The reality is that, my parents worked all the time. And then when it was time for me, I always considered myself a smart guy, a bright student. Didn't always get the best grades, but, I still went through college and got my bachelor's and master's and all that. And I've been a teacher, regular ed classroom teacher for almost 20 years now. Filled some different roles over the course of time, depending on where I was needed in the particular season of life. But that's pretty much what I've been. Currently, I actually teach special ed. And so the role that I'm actually in now is as a special ed teacher, finally, which I guess makes sense for me. But about 10 years ago, when my son was first diagnosed, I started to go through what I think most dads of special needs kids go through, which is you're really trying to find out not just what's going on with your kid, but it's also a journey of self-discovery for yourself, meaning most dads, and when I say this, I'm not just saying it because it's a guess. It's from talking to many dads over the years and talking to the wives of many dads over the years. And what you find is that most men, when your child has a diagnosis of a special need, whether like in my case, autism or, whatever it is, the general reaction is, okay, I'm a guy, I'm a fixer, I'm going to fix this. Right. How do I fix it? Well, I might not be a doctor. I may not have a magic cure for it, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to work. And I'm going to work really hard at my job. And I am going to provide the best I can for my family so that we can then pay those doctors and medical professionals and clinics and specialists to take care of our kid. Now, that's great. That's great. That is definitely a place to start, and it's an important place. But the problem is it's not the only place. And what you find when you have a diagnosis of a special needs child is that it puts pressure, as I like to say, or the word I like to use, exacerbates all the problems that might already be in that marriage. So if you're already having financial issues, you're going to have way more financial issues. Yeah. You're going to have way more issues in your marriage. You're going to have way more emotional issues with yourself. Now, in my case, what happened was, just to kind of tell you the more of the Cliff Notes version, we can do a deeper dive as we go here. Yeah. But what I found is, first of all, I was a teacher. I wasn't making a lot of money. My wife was a teacher. Together we could definitely support a household. But the problem then is now you have a child who has significant needs. Insurance doesn't cover everything. On top of the fact that, in my case specifically, I wasn't always the breadwinner. My wife always made more money than me because she always had a better job than I did. And I didn't have a problem with that. But the issue then becomes, okay, I'm not the breadwinner. I'm certainly not the sole breadwinner. And I had a wife who, even to this day, I will say, regardless of the fact that I did wind up being divorced, she's an excellent mom, excellent. And type A personality, and gets in there and, contacts the people and creates the calendars and the schedules and you name it. And then on top of that, she had her mother. And her mother, my mother-in-law at the time, was very involved, very supportive, very generous financially specifically, but also very type A. So my experience of this was you had a wife who was an awesome mom. You had a mother-in-law who was awesome with being a support as a grandmother. But then I felt like the third wheel because I wasn't the breadwinner. And I wasn't the one who was doing all of the nuts and bolts. I was really just that extra piece, which, they were never saying to my face, you're not worth it. But this is what you experience. This is what you go through. What is my worth? What's my value here? What do I do that is specific and unique to this whole dynamic here? So for many men, that's where you get delusioned. That's why, and I don't want to quote an exact number here or percentage because it changes all the time and it's hard to nail it down. But if, the general argument is the divorce rate in the country is 50%, let's say, right? We can all kind of agree on that.
Yeah.
The divorce rate for special needs is almost 80%, within the first 3 years of a diagnosis, and again, those numbers may change, don't quote me, but, these are the kind of things we've heard over the years. 80% of those special needs marriages, okay, and even if it's not exactly that number, the vast majority of them, we can agree on that, fail.
Right.
And usually it's for reasons like what I'm describing, because people don't really know what their roles are. They get pushed, they get squeezed. And when there aren't outlets and when there aren't support systems in place to support your marriage, to support you as a father, to support you as a parent, support you as an individual, then we go down that deep dark hole that we don't want to think about, but it happens to a lot of us. Myself, I am the product of divorce. Now, here's the interesting thing, though. Several years ago, I started advocacy work for special needs parents, families, specifically dads. And I kind of fell into it in kind of some strange ways. But basically what happened was I had a desire to do writing. I've always wanted to be a writer. That was just kind of a thing of mine. And I started kicking around the idea to some people about, man, I should write about my experiences as a special needs dad. And I worked with some people, but I really couldn't get it off the ground. And I was just kind of floating for a little bit. And all of a sudden, I connected with a woman who used to attend, we used to belong to a special needs family retreat that used to meet up in Michigan once a year. Now, this is through a larger organization called Johnny and Friends. And through the course of our conversation, I will be dropping organizations left and right that I work with or connect with. But Johnny and Friends is a global Christian ministry that works with special needs families. They do a lot for a lot of people. But one of the things they do here locally in the US is they do a family retreat. So when you've got a special needs kid, you can't do vacation like everyone else, right? You just can't get on the plane and say, let's go to Disney or whatever it is. If you have a child who has medical needs to bring physical equipment with, maybe has issues traveling in general, you can't really do a vacation. So what they do is they offer these vacations at very discounted rates. They usually do them. The one in Michigan was actually at a Bible conference center that was right on Lake Michigan. It was a beautiful setup. And you get a one-on-one for the week. Your child has built-in support so that you as a family can enjoy a vacation. You as a couple can enjoy time together. You as an individual can go get a break. So we did this for about 5 years straight. And one of the moms who was connected with them, that I connected with as I was kind of seeking to find an outlet for my writing, the writing bug, so to speak. She blogged for an organization that was based in Wisconsin, a small special needs organization in Wisconsin. She was a blogger and she said, hey, we're always looking for more guys, more men. Why don't you try it out? And I thought to myself, well, I'm not really a blogger. It's not my style. I don't know if I could do that, because it's just pretty unknown to me. I've certainly read them, but I've never tried writing them. But I tried it and I saw that I liked it and I wasn't bad at it. And about 6 months after I started with them, they got absorbed into a larger organization called Key Ministry, which is based in Cleveland, Ohio. And Key Ministry is also a special needs Christian ministry. And they definitely have a national presence. And they have a lot of folks who, if you're kind of in this world and some of these folks that you see speak at these conferences or write these books, that was kind of the organization where a lot of them connected with. So not only did I find myself now writing for them, but then I got invited to also present at their national conference in Cleveland So they do a big yearly thing out where they're based right outside of Cleveland. I got to speak as part of a dad's panel and whatnot, so, being on stage for me, not that I was nervous because being a teacher, I'm kind of used to that, but it was still a new experience for me. Right.
Yeah.
So, and from there, it just kind of snowballed. And, you meet one person with one organization, you meet one with another. It's all this kind of synergy and getting invited to different conferences and blogging for other people and doing podcasts and interviews and all this and that and the other thing. Yeah. On top of working with organizations that specifically also supported special needs dads. So I myself created a small special needs support group for dads in my area, in my local area. Pretty small group. I still run it, but honestly, we maybe have 10 guys, give or take, that kind of make the core of that. But what I then connected with was a larger organization that actually has that's now worldwide, and it's called the Special Fathers Network. And I'm really going to push this one because this organization has, this thing is ready to. It's if it hasn't already blown up, which I believe it has, it's going to blow up even tenfold in the next few years because the guy that runs it, David Hirsch, is a very dynamic leader. He comes from the corporate world. He works for a global accounting firm. And, this is a guy who just, if you drop a name, he just knows him kind of a thing. And especially if you're in the Chicago area, if there's a Chicago celebrity, he knows him or has, brushed shoulders with him or whatever it is. And so that organization supporting just special needs dads has so many resources. They have a mentoring program. If you're a dad that needs help and support, you get mentorship opportunities. There's a whole series of podcasts. I was one of the podcast dads on there, but if you look at the list of podcast dads, which is now at about 150, there's some pretty impressive names on there, people that anybody would kind of recognize. There's a whole series of YouTube videos, roundtable discussions. We do a virtual conference every year. So that's an organization I'm very excited about being a part of as well. So, going from to kind of connect all the dots here for everyone, starting out as a guy who didn't know what his worth was to now being a guy who actually knows that he has worth, what that worth might be, and all of the different ways that I can contribute to bringing guys along. Because at one time, I was that guy who was out of a job and was lost and did write the suicide notes. I was that guy. And obviously I didn't go through with it, but I was there. And even though when I was there, I didn't have a lot of support, whatever support was there was enough to push me through. Right. And so if you have no support out there, well, first you got to get yourself some support. And I realize it's not as easy as it sounds, but it's important to know that it's out there for you. And sometimes it's just a matter of asking or just getting pointed in the right direction. Right. And sometimes it just takes one relationship and that's all you need. In my case, it was really being around some very, very positive, very faithful guys who just really spoke into me and spoke into my life when I needed it and how I needed it. Right. And that was enough to kind of get me through. So that's a whole other conversation in terms of my faith journey as well. But I do just, and I'll take a breath here and let you talk. But when I define support for dads, special needs dads especially, to me, and this is my teacher brain working here, it's a number one and a little A and a number one and a little B. Number 1A is faith for me, right? I'm not anywhere without my faith. My faith has gotten me through all of these sticky situations and more, right? Now, you may not be a person of faith. You may not be a religious person. You may not believe in anything beyond this world. That's okay. But you do need 1B, and 1B is community. Without community, forget it. So definitely, you may not be on the faith train, but definitely have to get yourself some community. No question about it.
And you're right. And I tell a lot of guys in my group too, that's where it all starts, right? Is that community. Because you need to surround yourself as a man around other men who understand what you're going through. And they could kind of walk you through it, because no one jumps into it and like actually knows what we're supposed to do, right? We just jump into it blindly and hopefully, somebody throws us a lifeline. And it happens, man. It's so crucial, and I tell these guys, like, go with the men that have walked the walk that you're walking. and just kind of talk to them a little bit. You find out that it's a lot more, it's a lot easier than what people think. Like, it's not overly complicated, but the stigma around it, no man wants to ask for help. It's so hard to get men to ask for help, right? And that's always a challenge. That's always a challenge. And I just tell them, look, man, sometimes what you're feeling is that call for help. That's your voice telling you, hey, you may need a little extra oomph over here, right? Because we're running out of steam. We've all been there, man. We've all been there. I've seen so many men struggle with it. So many men struggle with that. And I just go, when you run out of steam, like you said, and go to that dark place, you might want to start talking to someone before you get too far gone, because been down that road, man. Been down there, just like yourself. It's like you walk this path over here, and I'm looking at it going, man, so many similarities across the board. You're just dealing with life in a different way. You've had to adjust your parenting. You had to adjust the way that you look at things. And I think that's amazing, because there are so many men out there that are doing the same things. And I'm asking the women as well, just like yourself. And there's always, I don't know, I think there's a miscommunication going on. I'm not quite sure, man. I'm not quite sure. But it's also good to know that this support is out there, because I've learned something new. I've been so focused on in the one area, I hadn't even thought about that. And I want to say, man, I commend you. I definitely commend you, because that story right there, coming from nothing, being kicked around, and working your way back up to that top, and advocating, and it's just, to me, it's intriguing. It's amazing. Thank you.
Absolutely. And I think the place that I would also want to share as we get a little deeper into this is, the thing that I've kind of learned, and these last couple of years, as we talked about with COVID, everyone has a story about what's happened to them with COVID, right?
Right. Yeah.
We've all been stretched on some level. I myself, I went through not just a divorce. I had to go through the experience of being an only child and putting my mom into assisted living, cleaning out her house, getting, an attorney, getting a realtor, getting this, doing that whole process during COVID, and pretty much all by myself. And then on top of all that, to care for my son, transitioning with the move, I had a job change since I actually lost my previous position due to COVID, so there was a lot going on. But the one thing that I think, and I'll share the story because I think it really lends to my point here about, we have to remember that life is all about seasons, right?
Right.
And no one wants to hear it. Like, yeah, I'll share this because it'll just elaborate the story. So, when I talked about how I was in that dark place years ago, and this was about, let's say 2012-ish, okay, where, I was on the verge of suicide, that type of thing. And again, I wrote the letters, I never tried anything, but, regardless, emotionally, that's where I was at.
Right.
And I'm going to tell you the story of two parking lots. Okay. So this is how I'm going to frame this story. Two parking lots. In the summer of 2012, when I was first going through this, I sat in a parking lot outside of the church we attended at the time, which was a Unitarian church not far from us. And, it was at a point where it was looking like my wife and I would maybe separate, and, things were all just kind of chaotic, and I didn't really know where to turn. Now, there was a men's group that met at the church, and all the guys were pretty much older than me, right? By at least 20 years.
Right.
So I'm thinking, well, you know what? This is a good group of guys for me to be around because they're all older men. Maybe they can give me some advice or whatever, support, wisdom, anything. And it's funny because I sat in the parking lot before going into that meeting, and I called a couple of my oldest friends, and they were definitely responsive. They supported me. They cared about me. But they didn't really have any advice for me, because when I just explained all this and what was going on, it was just too much for them. They could not even connect it to say, man, I don't even know what to tell you, right?
Yeah.
So then I finish up those conversations, and then I go into this men's group meeting thinking, well, I'm going to get some support here. And I basically repeat the same story I just told to my friends on the phone, and all of them sat and they listened, and they were all kind of quiet. And then finally, the leader of the group said, well, we're sorry to hear that. That's really hard, but what you need to know is it's going to be okay, and you'll get through it. Now, when I heard that in that moment, I thought to myself, you got to be kidding me. I'm coming to you, like, I'm telling you, like, my life is on the line here.
Right.
And all you've got is it's going to be okay. Now, here's the thing about that. What I've learned in life, and I have a really good story about this that I'll kind of say for the end. Sometimes the best advice is the simplest. We don't always like to hear it because we think it's cliche and it doesn't have any substance, and it's that doesn't mean, like, what am I going to do with that, right? Well, here's the thing. As it turns out, we eventually left that church the same year. We joined a different church. I joined another men's group. It was a total opposite experience. Those were the guys that actually kind of propelled me into getting out of that valley and into the next phase of my life. I really credit those guys with doing that. It's very powerful group. But what happened is that coming out of that time, as my now ex-wife and I, we kind of rebuilt our marriage. We went through counseling. We did all these things. We kind of laid a new foundation. But one of the things that I did, of course, was relationship build, right? So I built relationships with guys that I knew mattered and had substance and had some idea of what support looked like for themselves, and then also giving back to others, right? So I really learned from some good men. I had a lot of great models that I kind of put around me. Most of them were from the church we belonged to, but not all. It was kind of whoever was in my space kind of a thing. And so what happened was, our marriage got back on track. We had another good 6-7 years. And then one day out of the blue, and I swear this is exactly how it happened. It was Black Friday of 2019. So no pun intended, literally the day after Thanksgiving, Black Friday, my ex-wife walked in the house. I thought she was out shopping or running some errands. My kid was out with a family friend. She asked me to, go to the other room, pulls me aside, reads me a literal Dear John letter. And here you go. Here's some papers. I didn't expect it. We weren't fighting. I didn't know what was going on. My head was spinning, right?
Yeah.
So here's the thing. As much work as I did, that didn't prevent that from happening. But here was the difference. Unlike 2012, when I sat in that parking lot and thinking to myself, what am I going to do? Because I had spent so much time being intentional about not just developing myself and my character, but building bridges and creating a network. And that's not all just me taking from others. That's also me reaching out to others, being a friend and being a support, and understanding what it means to give back. Because when you need it, hopefully it's going to be there for you. So the day she handed me those papers, I was a mess, but I said, you know what? Okay, I have to get out of the house. I have to get out of the house, clear my head. I got in the car. I took a short drive to local big box store parking lot. I just sat, got quiet, prayed. And I said, okay, who am I going to call? And here was the difference as opposed to 2012. I had guy after guy after guy I could call. I had friends who were attorneys I could call. Actually, the first guy I called was a friend who was not only an attorney, he was also divorced and a special needs dad. So he knew exactly what to tell me. He knew exactly the advice to give me and exactly what I needed to hear. I called other friends that were special needs dads that were divorced. I called other friends that were just, good friends, married, whatever. But I had guy after guy after guy I could call. I, in fact, had women that were wives of friends or, that knew me from our old church or whatever it was. And if they had some professional background in something, whether like social work or counseling, whatever, even they were there for me, right? Okay. So I had the supports built in. But again, I emphasize, that's not all about me taking and saying, okay, let me stack up business cards for when I need you. It's being intentional and saying, you know what, I was there for you when you walked through this. You know what, man, I'm right there with you now too. Right. So Now we get to do it together. That's the only difference. But that's the power in that. That's the power of community, because no one wants to have that experience, metaphorically, of sitting in that car alone in that parking lot, not knowing who am I going to call? Does anybody even care? Or is somebody just going to say it's going to be okay when I have no idea if it's going to be okay? But I learned it will be if I can trust that I've got those supports in place, believe that there is a reason for me being here, remembering my own worth, and then just moving forward step by step.
And see, I think that's amazing, because it's something that I have been thinking about, the fundamentals of what men go through, right? And building a structure behind it. And it sounds like, the same things: community, support, communication, and your health, right? It's just not just your physical health, it's your mental health, it's your spiritual health, your emotional health. You mentioned earlier about faith, right? And I totally agree with that. And I'm the same way. I don't care if you believe or if you don't. I just do what works for me and how it helped get me to the next level, right? It became like my blueprint of walking through some of the worst moments in my life, right? I would say time, but they were just moments that seemed like they lasted forever. And the one thing that I wish I had, I had on a smaller level, but I had to create mine, was the support, right? I had a support group that I was going to, and it got to a point to where the language that we were speaking, I didn't understand anymore, right? You know what I'm saying? Because of the road that my path had started leading me on. I knew, okay, I've been here for a couple seasons. It's time for me to move on. But like yourself, that proverbial parking lot, like, where do I go from here? And it wasn't, I didn't have anyone to reach out to. And so, but at least I didn't think so anyway, right? I think every man goes to that, where they think that they're by themselves and, things like that. And until you come up and tap them on the shoulder, or you, like yourself, you build that network bridge and you have that support lined out. And I can say nowadays, there are more men support groups around the world than there was when we first started, right? And I think that's crazy, because it's like, it's now people are starting to pay attention. They're realizing that what they're seeing is not what we're actually going through, like the emotional aspect of it, the being afraid of being vulnerable for what people may think of us, or things like that. But also, what is it that we need? The things that we actually need, like you said, like you had people who came together because of those relationships that you built. But to the person who's hesitant about it, what would you say to them to, encourage them to build that bridge, right? Because I know how I did it, and you explained a little bit how you did it, but coming from a different perspective, what would you tell them? Because they may not know.
Right. Well, so here's where I think I would start out with too, right? First of all, I think it starts with acknowledgement. Mm-hmm. You have to acknowledge, number one, that whatever you are facing, whatever that is bigger than you. And it is not, as you and I have talked about ourselves, there's no shame in asking for help. But men frequently feel, again, going back to like at the beginning of our conversation here, thinking about the guy who just figures he's going to throw himself in his work and that'll just fix everything. Right. But then he's on an island, right? And so it comes down to acknowledgement. I think you bring up a good point, because I think the one benefit of COVID, and it's one of these weird things, because when we as a society go through this type of an event, it does change us, right? It changes fundamentally. Like, our world will never be the same after this, just kind of like 9/11, right? The world's just not going to be the same. And we could say, wow, I wish for the old days, or I wish for how things were and whatever. And that's fine. But you know what? Think about the way that people have been able to connect now, right?
Yeah.
I mean, virtually, I mean, you thought we were connected before, which we were, but maybe people weren't plugging in or being as intentional or taking advantage of it in the same way. Now,
Yes.
people are like, give it to me, give me as much as you have. Now, I'll admit, I think there's also a lot of this, as they joke about it, Zoom fatigue or online fatigue, whatever, too. I understand that piece, which is why we're all excited to get back out there and interact in the flesh, one-on-one. But the reality is this: if you're a guy out there who is hesitant because you're like, and this was always the thing, when I first started my small support group that I did just locally here in the area. It's hard to get guys out, even if the guys know each other, because if you're going to be talking about some personal stuff, they don't want to go there. The one thing that I learned to do is, okay, if I want to get men out, I'll just get a guest speaker. Why? Because a guy may not want to tell you about him or share his feelings, but you know what? He'll shut up and just, it's that thing of like, go sit in the back of the classroom. I'll just listen and zone out and whatever. Okay, that's cool. Nod my head and okay, see you later. It's that type of thing. But at least you get him in the door. You know what I mean?
Very true.
But now what we're talking about is, look, we've all suffered. We've all struggled because we've been locked inside, or we've been forced to work from home, or we've been forced to help our kids learn from home, or now you're spending more time with your spouse maybe than you thought you would, or maybe that you necessarily wanted to, but now you and your spouse are on a whole other level of intimacy in that sense, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, it's we're doing life in a new way. And I think that if you're a guy who still says, look, I don't want to be in a room of strange guys, well, then just open up your laptop. Yes. Or go on your tablet or go on your phone. And you know what? There's lots of things where you don't have to contribute. You can watch, you can contribute a little, you can contribute a lot. A lot of the stuff that I'm involved with, especially the Special Fathers Network, is great because you can be more passive. So for example, they offer a mentorship program. Mm-hmm. You can meet with that mentor one-on-one, just like we're having the conversation now. You don't have to have a room full of anybody else, just one-on-one. Yeah. If you want to watch a video presentation, or listen to a podcast, do that. If you want to get on one of the live streams of when they do, twice a month, a Zoom call and like a panel discussion, you could be live on there and just watch. You don't have to contribute. They may ask and introduce yourself or something, but that's fine. But again, it's a way to get the ball rolling, right? And so, in many ways, I think, when I see, as I'm sure you have, as we all have, whoever's watching this, you turn on the TV and there's a million commercials about self-help and about support and, ways to, help you process your feelings, or, just all these different ways to even work out. I mean, man, all the technology with working out now, the Peloton and the mirror, I'm like, man, this is just, some sci-fi stuff. But the reality is it's life in a new way. And the benefit there is this: if you're a guy who doesn't want anyone knowing your business, that's okay. But you can still be in a community, in a virtual community, and you can do it at your own pace until you feel comfortable to connect with men in person, because that's the next thing. And I will say this, my small group that I do, we've done a lot of stuff on Zoom, and turnout has been like nothing. There's like one guy, I'll tell you, there's one guy that always shows. Right. And I always know I'm going to see him and I'm going to talk to him. And if I don't talk to him otherwise, I know I'll talk to him there. But I said, okay, we're going to meet actually next Wednesday. We're going to meet in person at the it's like a sports bar in one of the local towns, and they give us like a party room that we can use privately and all that. I've probably got more interest for this one coming up than I have, I don't know, in years, in terms of guys asking questions. Yeah, I'd like to come, or I'm planning on coming and all that. Why? Because now men are like, I got to get out of the house. Yeah. And that's okay too. Yeah. So just come in. We're not going to make you, stand on your head or anything. You just show up. If you say a little or say a lot, basically is all it is. But it's these little steps. And luckily now we have some different ways to make those little steps. The little steps will lead to big steps. Right. How do you want to make those little steps? Do you want to just sit in front of the laptop at first? That's okay. Are you good with going and meeting a group of guys? That's great too. It just depends on where you are at right now.
Right. And I totally agree. Zoom was a really good move, because for someone like myself, it allowed me to reach out to more people across the United States, right? One of our goals were when we started this was that we wanted to connect with other organizations that were doing similar work, right? And maybe they had some that they was doing that that I wasn't doing. I wanted to make it available to other men, just in case. And it just like yourself, it just kind of stacked up. And next thing you know, we got people from New Zealand and Australia. I mean, how awesome is that, right? And it's like you said, I find, at least on my end, I found that more men were comfortable sitting at home because they didn't have to turn on their screen. They didn't have to say anything. And hey, I was fine with that. I was like, at least you showed up, right? At least you showed up. You don't have to say nothing. And there was times where, when we had biker guys in there that were in there grieving, and other people were going, look at other guys were going, holy crap. And I used to always tell them, like, it's that old saying, man, men iron sharpens iron. This is what it's all about. We spend a lot of time trying to reclaim the manhood, right? And not enough time redefining what manhood really is. Emotions. We are created with these things. Like, I don't know, my faith has been a huge thing. And for some people, it's something different. And I just tell them, whatever that is, hold on to it, right? You know what I'm saying? Don't matter what anybody else is talking about, because they're just doing what works for them, but do what works for you. And more men started to open up their mouths. And I used to get this a lot too from females I talked to. He won't stop talking. And I thought that was the craziest things. But I also seen family members, like female family members and other male family members, talk down to him. And that whole stigma. What are you talking like that for? Men don't talk like that. Or I've heard women tell their brothers, stop crying. Stop crying. Men don't cry. And I was going, man, this is what we're up against. So looking at it across the board, I'm only imagining what is being said on this end, kind of similar. And it's like, man, how do we get past that?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
How do we get past that?
Right. And that is, that really is probably the next hurdle. It's
Right.
really these stigmas about, that they're ingrained in society. And we have to really, I've heard people for a long time, I've talked to a lot of people. I've talked to people, in the counseling world and all this and, whatever. And the fact is that we all know that, we've got feelings and we have to feel our feelings. We have to get in touch with them.
Right.
And in some way, I feel like I think it's definitely being taken more serious now because of COVID and because of the self-help issues and the self-care issues. But it still kind of fits this stereotype of, oh yeah, guys feeling their feelings, haha, like it's still some inside joke. It's like, well, the reality of it is that, I'll say this, Tony, I understand men a lot more now since the day I've gotten separated, because when I got separated, like a lot of guys, I did turn to the internet and I, joined some of these divorce groups and support groups, and, they got them on Facebook and Reddit and all this stuff. And I'm just reading these guys' stories or these questions or these things that happen. And first of all, I'm saying to myself, man, I should not complain, because compared to some of this stuff, me and my ex, we're getting along like two peas in a pod on the one hand. But on the other hand, what I saw is the amount of pain,
yes,
that a lot of these guys are going through, and literally, their lives not just coming to a stop, but really just being wiped out. I mean, there are men out there, and I'll say this. I mean, I'm not in the best place overall per se, but I'm on solid enough footing where, I know I know what's coming tomorrow, at least I think I do,
Yeah.
And I can get to tomorrow kind of a thing. Whereas there are some men who really don't know where they're going to turn and literally don't have help. I mean, some of these these virtual communities are all they have. And, I'll say this, and this is probably something you've definitely seen in your experience. What really hit me, this might have been a few weeks ago, I was on one of these divorce groups, and someone had posted a picture of a guy who was sitting in his car. And it was the last picture he took before he killed himself. And they mentioned the guy's name, and that's not important here. But the fact is that whoever shared it knew about him or knew his story, and also made a comment like, this was a guy who was divorced. He lost custody of his kids. He had like nothing in his bank account. He and you could see the despondency in his face. I mean, you knew that this guy had come to the end of his rope. I mean, and it wasn't anger. It was this profound sadness of what happened to me and why did it happen? Because when you're a guy, and I'll just say, like in my case, where my ex just kind of very nicely showed me the door kind of a thing, it's like, what did I do? I know I'm not perfect.
Right.
I know I've done things in the past to hurt you or said things maybe that, were untoward, whatever. But do I deserve this? Now, in the big picture, I know that there's a purpose to everything and there's a lesson and all that. But in that moment, and still in these moments now, is, I'm still kind of recovering from the grief and the loss and all of that. It's, it's like, God, why is this happening to me?
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
And that's where that community piece comes in. The faith piece, again, I stress that first, because here's the thing. You can have your faith even if you're by yourself, because God walks with you even if you're by yourself. But as a human being, you still need people. And whether that's in a faith setting, or whether that's just a bunch of guys sitting around a table having a beer and talking about their day, or whatever it is, you need that connection. You need to know that, you're not a bad person. You're not broken. You're not worthless. You are still a man. You may or may not be a husband anymore. You may be a father, but you may also be a respected part of your community, a great friend, a great neighbor, whatever it is. You didn't stop being those things because trauma happened to you. You still are those things. And now pull on those things, pull on those resources, pull on those strengths to now push you through this. Because again, it is just a season.
Right.
And you will get through that.
And you're absolutely right. And talking about trauma, I can speak from a different perspective. Most men that I come across, we bury that trauma so deep, and it takes so much to want to admit that it actually happened, and I've seen it go sideways. I've seen it go every which way but loose, man. And I've also seen men step up inside of it and go, you know what? This has happened and I understand now. And it's like they begin to seek paths of healing. And I say that just to say, I've seen so many men, choose the path of destruction because they don't know what true healing is. Like you and I are sitting around right now. We understand the pain that comes along with it, right? From a different perspective, but we still understand it, on a different level. Right, to where we can look at other people or other men and be around them and actually accept what they're going through. Whereas, I've sat around other men where they couldn't accept it themselves. And like you said, they have that look of despair. I've been there, man. I used to be that guy. I just like yourself, I was that guy that was angry. Right, especially being a man in society, trying to figure it all out. Been on my own since I was a teenager, and just been through it, man. Just been through it. And there was times I was mad at God for the longest time, and I think when people struggle in their faith, they don't know that that's okay. I realized that later on in life, and I was so mad at God. I was like, man, why are you doing this to me? What did I do, right? And then after a while, I just began to accept it as it was part of my life, right? My self-talk was bad. I was like, look at you, man. You're a piece of nothing out here. What are you doing? Go ahead, end it, right? And it led to a life of loneliness, just walking a path that I didn't want no one else to be a part of. I really did. My own family, for the longest time, didn't even know that I've gone through that much, right? And it's just me and my little sister now. My sister didn't even know until I told her. Well, when I started doing podcasting, which I thought that was a great way to put a story out there and begin to search for my more authentic self due to trauma, right? And when I say that, I talk about, I mentioned the men who have walked it before me and have paved the way, and how we're paving the way now for other men to be able to walk and feel comfortable, right? Feel comfortable enough to want to communicate, but not just, verbally, but through different actions and like minds of servitude. I get so much joy out of that, taking my pain and going, you know what, instead of letting it put me in a place of depression, I want to use it as a tool to help the next man, because like you said, it's bigger than both of us, right? This thing that's out here in this world, we're just a small part. We're just small ones trying to do our part into it in this bigger collective of people trying to make a difference in this world.
Right. And, it's interesting because, again, as I kind of have that perspective about it, it also takes a fair amount of courage on our parts too, to really put ourselves out there. And for a lot of guys, again, when you've been beaten down enough, the first thing in your head might not be, well, let me think about how I can help the next guy. But, the place that you also want to come back to is that, again, remember that at all times, you are equipped with exactly what you need to get through that next day. And again, that there is a certain bit of faith that's involved there, at least, how I process it, type of a thing. But it's this reminder that, you're asked to go through these seasons and these challenges, one, to help you grow, but also two, because you can't help another guy if you don't have a certain amount of perspective yourself.
Right.
And again, that doesn't mean that all of us are meant to suffer lives of this trauma and horror, whatever, but it's that, listen, whatever your experience is, you can then take that to help someone else in whatever way, type of a thing. But we all have to have this mindset, I think, of being willing to put ourselves out there, right? Whatever that means for us. There are certainly guys, there are a lot of guys that I could count on my fingers and toes that are doing much more than I am. And there's probably a lot of reasons for that. You may be able to say the same thing, but that doesn't take away from what we do.
Right.
We do what we're called to do, right? This is our lane. This is our role. And so I just accept it and I say, okay, this is where I'm supposed to be at now. 5 years from now, it's going to look totally different. And that's the other thing that I remind myself of too is, it's tough today. It's not always going to be tough. Because the other thing that I've learned in life too is that, sometimes the only way to get to where you need to be is to wind you through this course. Because if someone were to tell, for example, myself or you years ago, hey, you know what, John, when you're in your 40s, you're going to be an advocate. You're going to be you're going to help to build support networks for men. You're going to be a supporter. You're going to be a leader for other men. But oh, by the way, in order for you to have the tools that you need, you're going to have to go through divorce, raising a special needs child, financial troubles, losing your marriage, losing your home, helping your mom losing her home, navigate the legal systems. Are you okay with that? You on board with that, right?
Yeah.
Now, me, as my former pastor said, if you would have told me what was down the road, I'd have been hasta la bye-bye. I'm like, no, thank you. Because it all sounds great at the end, but it's the getting there that's the issue. And you know what? That's why I don't need to know what's around the next bend. I'll just trust that I'll handle it when it comes.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't go through what I did now if I didn't have the experiences before. And now I'm being set up for, hey, you know what? I'm thinking to myself, there are a lot of great lessons here. There are a lot of great experiences. They're going to have value, but there's so many more guys that I'll be able to help too.
Right.
That's exciting too, right?
I
So I get excited for that as well.
Yeah, I love that because I couldn't tell you. I mean, if you had seen my life, you pretty much just described it right there, and you're absolutely right. If someone would have told me that same thing, you know, I have something for you, but I'm gonna have to take you through some things first. Are you going to be okay with that? And if they would have laid it out, I'm pretty sure I'd have opted out. I'd be like, hey, I'm sorry, who does that? Right. You know, and I talk to so many people and I laugh about it now because I'm like, we go through these things, man. And men often, when you tell them, it's the men that you see standing off to the side, kind of looking away. Those are the ones that I try to get their attention because they understand what I'm talking about. Right. And so I keep talking just so they know, hey, man, I see you. I see you. And I know you can relate to this story. I know you're not going to say anything right now, but afterwards, man, I'll tap you on your shoulder just to let you know I acknowledge you. And man, I tell you, I don't think I would have. I don't think I would change anything now. Right, going through the things. Of course, you know, we wish things would have been different, and all of these things. We wish so many the coulda, shoulda, woulda's, right? You know, the what ifs. And I can say the road it sounds like we've both been on has been pretty blessed. You know what I'm saying? It's been full of the surprises, but I don't think what people don't understand is coming out the other side of that storm. You know, you go into it and we have our own, you know, idea of what that looked like, you know, like we have a metaphor for it. Mine's is a deep well. And, you know, it's like, oh, shoot, man, how similar is that? And listen to yours. I could just switch mine over and just give it to you and be like, here you go. Because it's like sitting here right now. Who would have thought, right? Who would have, who would have thought, you know, having people that we can serve and taking something so I don't know, so complex, you know what I'm saying, and taking it and making sense out of it. I guess that's the best terminology I can use for it because it is complex, right? When we think about all of these different perspectives, you know, having a child who's autistic. My neighbor a long time ago had a child who was autistic, Jonah. And Jonah, he was a handful. He was a handful. And I used to listen to them, and now I'm listening to you. I'm just like, wow, man. I wish other men knew that was out there, that they didn't have to go through it. Because I watched his dad try to raise him and his mom, and they struggled. And I'm thinking back, man, I wish I would have known you back then, because I would have definitely been like, hey, check this out, you know. Man, how has it changed your life? You know, raising a child who's autistic. How has it changed your life as a man? You know, and as you walk now.
Well, that's pretty big, but here's how I'll frame it. I know for myself that my son is an absolute gift to me. And this is also where in these times of trauma that I can really pull back and get that, you know, they talk about that view from 10,000 feet kind of a thing, or, you know, the view from heaven kind of deal, where you say, you know what, you need to really see the big picture here, you know. Going back to this idea about, you know, if someone would have come up to you however many years ago and said, yeah, you're going to be here by this time, but these are the things you're going to have to go through. You know, I have a son who technically can't speak. He's nonverbal.
Right.
Does he speak a little bit? Yeah, but he you know, he's not going to have a conversation with you or anything, right? He's a kid who likes to be active, but he's not really coordinated, and he doesn't have the focus, so he can't play any sports really. He actually did have some trauma with not his brain per se, but they needed to do some operating on his skull to relieve some pressure on the brain kind of thing. So now he really can't play anything that's any contact, physical, nothing. So, I've got a kid who's not going to be an athlete. I've got a kid who's not going to talk. I've got a kid who is going to need one-on-one support the rest of his life. Now, you might say to yourself, if you knew that, would you want a child like that? But here's the thing. When I look at that kid, when that kid looks at me, when he smiles every time he sees me, when he chatters on, and just when he's around, even if we're not in the same room, I can hear from the other room going, Dad, 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 Dad. That's a kid who is excited to see me, to be around me, to be with me, regardless of whatever we're doing, however we're spending our time. That's still my son. That is still the one who, however deep you want to go with it, I'm the one that got to be trusted with him. Right. I'm the one who had the tools to father him. I'm the one that can deal with the meltdowns or the crazy sick or the this or the that in that way. And it's not to say there aren't some other great dads out there, again, who are dealing with these type of scenarios or some to more extremes in some places. And I know them and I've met them. But the fact is that, this is where, even going back to this idea about, what's tomorrow going to bring? What's around this next corner? See, in my head now, after having gone through all this, I know I've got a purpose here. And I don't know exactly where it's going to end up, by the time I'm ready to, go upstairs, so to speak. But the fact is I've got a purpose here. I've got good work that I'm doing. And I know that it is about helping people, specifically men. Right. So I know that regardless of how bad the day might look, I know I'm going to be okay. I'm going to be okay. I could go into fear. I could go into despair. That's my choice, but I don't have to. Right. I don't have to live there. I can totally shift it. You know what? I've been through all this. And you telling me that, this minor thing here is going to derail me or so, well, that's it now. Now this thing happened. No, because I'll tell you what, my life is not where I want it to be right now. But I will say this, I have a lot to be thankful for. Yeah. And that includes my son because, it is hard. It is hard to raise a child like that. And, that was actually, as we were going through the divorce process and, we sat at a table and had our first meeting with the lawyers and the counselors and the financial people and this whole deal, I was the one that actually said, you know what, the person that's really going to suffer here is our son, because kids like him don't need divorce. No kid needs divorce. Let's be fair. It is traumatic on whatever level. A child like him needs both his parents. And if there was any way that could be saved, I would have been willing to do that. And that's not how it worked out. But, this is a child who needs mom and dad, needs dad. And you know what? It's my love for him and the love that he gives back to me that reminds me on those really hard days. And even those days where I thought about taking my own life, right. I'd say to myself, you realize you're going to leave your son alone. Dad's just not going to be there anymore. What is he even going to think? Is he even going to understand it? And that's the thing, even with divorce, and I've said this to my ex and I've said it to even some of his therapists, like, we don't know what's going on in his head because he can't tell us. Is he okay with this? Are there things that are a problem for him? Is he sad about it? You don't know. And I can see that he's happy when he's with me. He's happy with my ex. He's generally a happy kid, whatever. So that's great. But do you really know what he's thinking? And see, that's, again, what also helped to pull me out of those really dark places is that love to say, you know what, man, you can call yourself a script all you want, but you're everything to that kid. And don't ever think that you don't have value because that kid loves you. And he loves you just because you're his dad. Doesn't matter anything else. And at the end of the day, when again, you have those hard days, you go back to that. And that's what really pushes you forward next day, step by step.
So I like that. How can people get a hold of you?
Yeah. So as I like to say, if you punch my name in the Google machine, you'll find me everywhere. So the main place I would say check out is my website. It's just my name, johnfelageller.com, johnfelageller.com. You will see a bunch of stuff I've done, a bunch of my writing, podcasts, video things, you name it. And of course, you can connect with that to link to some of these other organizations I work with, see some other stuff. The one thing I'll tell you about my website, I have a wonderful, talented friend who put it together. Unfortunately, she has a lot on her plate. It's not always good about updating all the fresh stuff. So if you want the freshest and newest stuff, check me out on social media. So if you go to Facebook, you can just look me up on Facebook. Feel free to send me a friend invitation, no problem. I have a blog page on Facebook also too, which is John's Special Needs blog. It's just John's Special Needs blog. So you could look that up as well if you want to follow that. Again, I drop everything on there. I'm on Instagram, jfelageller74, jfelageller74 on Instagram, or if you just punch in my name. Twitter, same thing. Just punch in my name, jfelageller, etc. Hang on, I mixed that up. See, I got too much social media happening. That's how it is these days. I'm Jay Felageller on Instagram and Jay Felageller74 on Twitter. And but if you just put my name in Google, you'll see all that. So.
Oh my God, man, that is amazing. I think we're following each other on social media because there's some people I would love to get you in contact with that I believe that you guys can do some great work together. And so I'm definitely going to be looking forward to what's coming up with you and connecting with you more further on down the line and possibly doing some work together. I think that would be. And I want to say thank you for taking the time out to be on the show today. And before we leave, do you have any encouraging words for anyone out there in your situation? What would you tell them right now?
What I would tell them is this: regardless of what you are going through now or what you have been through, you are not alone. There are men out there that will listen to you, that will speak to you, that will support you, whatever it is. And I've always said this: if I just help one guy, whatever I've done is worth it. I always have time to talk to someone, right? As I'm sure, Tony, you would probably say the same thing. You may need to find the time, but you have the time, yes. and you'll make the time. So if somebody out there hears this and they're like, man, I have nobody, you can always send me a message, email, whatever it is. And you know what? If I'm the guy to talk to, great. If there's someone else I can pass you off to, great. But don't do this alone. You're not meant to do it alone. You don't have to do it alone. And most importantly, you can't do it alone. When you can come to that understanding and realization, then the real healing and the real growth can begin.
Man, I like that. I really like that. And to everyone out there tuning in, thank you for being a part of another great, awesome show of Memories of Us. Until next time, keep your heads up and support each other. Remember, we can't do it alone, just like John said, and tomorrow's another day, but it's again through the day that matters. So until next time, guys, stay up.